Right now, at this very moment, your brain is performing an act of creation so profound that we rarely stop to notice it. Everything you're experiencing, my voice, your surroundings, even your sense of self, isn't what you think it is. It's a carefully constructed story your mind tells you about reality, woven together from fragments of memory, expectation, and sensation. And sometimes, just sometimes, the story stutters, the narrative thread tangles, and you find yourself standing in a moment that feels impossibly familiar, as if you've lived it before in perfect detail. Welcome to Sleep About Science. Tonight, wherever you are in the world, perhaps curled up in bed in London, listening from a quiet apartment in Tokyo, settling into evening in Sao Paulo, or watching the stars appear over the Australian outback, we're exploring the mysterious phenomenon of déjà vu, that strange and wonderful glitch in the matrix of consciousness. And if you drift off to sleep while listening, that's perfectly wonderful. Your brain will continue processing these ideas even as you rest, perhaps weaving them into dreams that feel both familiar and impossibly strange. Before we begin, please make yourself comfortable. Pull your blankets up if you need to. Adjust your pillow. Let your body settle into whatever position feels most peaceful. Feel free to close your eyes, to let your breathing slow and deepen. And remember, this is educational content, not medical advice. If you haven't subscribed yet, you might want to, so you never miss these gentle journeys into science. There's something magical about exploring the mysteries of the universe together, even as we're scattered across different time zones and continents. Now, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin with a question that has puzzled philosophers, scientists, and ordinary people for centuries. Why does your brain sometimes convince you that you've experienced something before, when you know with absolute certainty that you haven't? Imagine, if you will, that you're walking down a street you've never seen before, in a city you're visiting for the first time. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The afternoon sun filters through the leaves of trees you couldn't name, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across weathered brick buildings. A church bell chimes in the distance, not a sound you recognize, yet somehow it resonates in your chest like an old song half remembered. And then it happens. The entire scene crystallizes into something impossibly familiar. Every detail, the way a red bicycle leans against that particular doorway, the precise angle of that woman's hat as she disappears around the corner, even the quality of the light and the rhythm of your own footsteps. Everything aligns with what feels like a perfect memory. For a moment that seems to stretch and compress time simultaneously, you're absolutely convinced you've been here before, experienced this exact sequence of events in precise detail, not something similar, not reminiscent of another place. This exact moment, with all its infinite complexity, feels like a repetition of something you've already lived. But that's impossible. You know it's impossible. Your rational mind is certain you've never been to this city, never walked this street, never seen that particular bicycle, or heard that specific bell. Yet the feeling is so overwhelming, so convincing, that for those few seconds you almost doubt your own memories. The sensation is like looking at a photograph of yourself in a place you know you've never been. This is déjà vu. From the French meaning already seen, it's one of the most common and yet most mysterious experiences of human consciousness, touching something so fundamental about how we experience time and memory that it has inspired everything from scientific research to spiritual speculation. Surveys suggest that between 60 and 70% of people experience it at least occasionally, with some reporting it happens several times a year. It typically lasts only seconds, but those seconds can feel like an eternity, a strange suspension between the familiar and the impossible, between memory and present experience. What makes deja vu so fascinating to neuroscientists isn't just that it happens, but what it reveals about the incredible complexity of how your brain constructs your experience of the present moment. You see, your brain isn't a passive recorder of reality, like a video camera simply capturing what's in front of it. Instead, it's an active storyteller, constantly weaving together information from your senses, your memories, your expectations, and your emotions to create what feels like a seamless experience of now. And deja vu might be what happens when the story gets briefly confused about its own timeline. To understand this better, we need to gently explore how memory works in your brain, because deja vu is fundamentally about memory, or rather, about the extraordinary ways memory can sometimes play tricks on itself. And this journey into the architecture of memory will take us to some surprising places, revealing not just how deja vu happens, but what it means to remember anything at all. Your brain doesn't store memories the way a computer stores files, in neat, organized folders, waiting to be retrieved exactly as they were saved. This is one of the most important things to understand about memory, and it's something that even many people with a casual interest in neuroscience find surprising. Instead, memory is more like a jazz musician improvising on a familiar theme, or an artist painting a new picture using colors and techniques learned from previous works. Each time you remember something, your brain is actively reconstructing that memory from scattered neural networks, filling in gaps with current information, subtly influenced by your mood, your surroundings, your recent experiences, and countless other factors you're not even aware of. This reconstruction happens so seamlessly that you rarely notice it. When you remember your childhood bedroom, for instance, your brain draws on stored visual information about the color of the walls, the position of your bed, the way light came through the window. But it also incorporates emotional information about how safe or happy you felt there, sensory details about sounds and smells, tactile memories of the texture of your bedspread or the feeling of your feet on the floor. It might even unconsciously include information from other bedrooms you've known since then, or from photographs you've seen, or from stories other people have told you about that room. The memory you experience feels concrete and specific, like you're looking back through time at something fixed and unchangeable. But it's actually a beautiful, complex improvisation that happens anew each time you remember. Your brain takes fragments stored across different regions: visual cortex, auditory cortex, emotional centers, motor areas that remember how it felt to move through that space, and weaves them together into what feels like a coherent recollection. This is why two people can remember the same event quite differently and both be telling the truth about their experience. It's why your memory of a childhood vacation might change slightly each time you remember it, especially if you talk about it with family members who recall details differently. It's why traumatic memories can feel so vivid and immediate, even years later, because the emotional intensity creates particularly strong connections between the different fragments that make up the memory. Now imagine this reconstruction process gets slightly out of sync with itself. Imagine that as you're experiencing a new situation, like walking down that unfamiliar street in the foreign city. Your brain's memory systems activate a fraction of a second before they should. Suddenly, the present moment gets tagged with that characteristic feeling of familiarity, as if it's being processed as both a new experience and a recalled one simultaneously. This is one of the leading theories about what causes deja vu, proposed by researchers studying the temporal lobe, that curved region of your brain that sits just above your ears and plays a crucial role in memory processing. The temporal lobe is like the brain's archivist and librarian rolled into one, containing the hippocampus, which helps form new memories and relates them to existing ones, and various other structures that work together to help you distinguish between what's happening now and what happened in the past. The hippocampus itself is a remarkable structure, shaped roughly like a seahorse and containing some of the most densely packed neurons in the human brain. It's constantly comparing incoming experiences to stored patterns, looking for matches and near matches that might help you understand and respond to current situations. When you walk into a new restaurant, your hippocampus might note similarities to other restaurants you've enjoyed, helping you feel comfortable and know what to expect. When you meet someone new, it might detect resemblances to people you already know, influencing your first impressions. But sometimes this system of pattern matching and comparison gets confused. Chris Moulin, a neuropsychologist who has spent years studying déjà vu at the University of Leeds, describes it as a memory of the present, a situation where your brain's familiarity detection system fires when it shouldn't, creating the uncanny sense that you've experienced something before. It's not that you're actually remembering a past event, it's that your brain is applying the neural signature of memory, the characteristic feeling of "I've experienced this before," to something that's happening right now. Think of it this way: your brain has sophisticated systems for tagging experiences as either new or familiar. When you see your best friend's face, familiarity signals fire immediately. You don't have to consciously search through your memories to recognize them. The recognition is instantaneous and automatic. When you encounter a complete stranger, those familiarity signals stay quiet, and your brain knows this is someone new. When you taste your grandmother's apple pie, memory networks light up with associations of her kitchen, previous family gatherings, childhood comfort. When you try a completely new food, those specific memory networks remain dormant while other systems process the novel flavors. But sometimes, these systems get their wires crossed. The familiarity signal fires for something genuinely new, creating that strange, impossible sensation that you've been here before. It's as if your brain's filing system temporarily mislabels a new experience as an old one, creating a contradiction that conscious awareness struggles to resolve. This explains why deja vu feels so different from normal memory. When you remember your last birthday, you can usually recall specific details: who was there, what you ate, how you felt, what gifts you received. The memory has content, substance, and narrative structure. But with deja vu, there are no specific details to retrieve. You can't pinpoint when or where you supposedly experienced this moment before. There's only that overwhelming sense of familiarity without any accompanying memories to explain it. It's like having the feeling of recognition without the recognition itself. Interestingly, deja vu becomes less common as people age. Young adults in their teens and 20s report experiencing it most frequently, while people over 60 report it much less often. This age related pattern has given researchers important clues about what might cause the phenomenon. It might be because younger brains are still developing their memory systems, making these temporal mix ups more likely. The neural pathways responsible for distinguishing between past and present experiences are still being fine tuned, creating more opportunities for the kind of timing errors that might produce deja vu. Or it could be that younger minds, constantly encountering new experiences and forming new neural pathways, are more prone to these occasional misfirings of familiarity. Think about how much novelty a typical teenager or young adult encounters: new schools, new relationships, new places, new challenges. Their brains are working overtime to process and categorize all this new information, creating more opportunities for the systems that tag experiences as familiar or unfamiliar to occasionally get confused. There's also evidence that stress, fatigue, and certain emotional states can make deja vu more likely. When your brain is operating under strain, the precise timing and coordination between different memory systems might become less reliable. This could explain why some people report experiencing deja vu more often during periods of high stress or when they're particularly tired. The connection between deja vu and epilepsy has provided some of the most valuable insights into the phenomenon. There's a condition called chronic deja vu, a rare but fascinating situation where people experience the sensation constantly, sometimes for hours or even days at a time. This typically happens when there's damage to the temporal lobe, often from conditions like temporal lobe epilepsy. Instead of brief, occasional episodes, these individuals might feel like everything they encounter is familiar, even experiences they know are genuinely new. Studying these extreme cases has helped scientists understand that deja vu involves specific brain regions and neural pathways, not just some vague sense of confusion. When neurologists monitor the brain activity of epilepsy patients using implanted electrodes, they can sometimes observe the neural events that correspond to deja vu experiences. This has revealed that the phenomenon involves precise patterns of electrical activity in the temporal lobe, particularly in areas responsible for memory formation and retrieval. These clinical observations have led to some remarkable discoveries. Neurosurgeons have found that they can sometimes trigger deja vu experiences by electrically stimulating specific parts of the temporal lobe during brain surgery. Patients will suddenly report that the operating room feels familiar, even though they know they've never been there before. This artificial deja vu shares the same strange quality as the naturally occurring phenomenon: an overwhelming sense of familiarity, coupled with the rational knowledge that the familiarity is impossible. But let's step back from the clinical perspective for a moment and consider something else about deja vu: its emotional quality. Most people don't just experience it as a cognitive puzzle or a simple case of mistaken recognition. There's often something deeply moving about it, something that touches the very core of their sense of self and their place in time. That moment on the foreign street isn't just confusing, it can be profound, almost spiritual, touching something deep about the nature of existence itself. Some researchers think this emotional dimension might be another crucial clue to what's happening in your brain during deja vu. The temporal lobe doesn't just process memory, it's also heavily involved in emotional processing. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system for detecting threats and significance, sits right next to the hippocampus. When the memory systems in this region get temporarily confused, The emotional systems might get involved too, adding intensity and meaning to what would otherwise be just a cognitive hiccup. This might explain why deja vu often feels like more than just mistaken familiarity. It can feel like a glimpse into something larger, the fabric of time itself, perhaps, or some deeper pattern in existence. Many people describe feeling during deja vu like they're touching something fundamental about the nature of reality, experiencing a moment of profound connection to the universe or to their own deeper self. Of course, from a scientific perspective, it's more likely just your emotional brain systems responding to the unusual activity in your memory systems. But that doesn't make the experience any less real or meaningful to the person having it. The fact that a small temporal confusion in memory processing can produce such profound feelings might actually tell us something important about how closely intertwined memory, emotion, and our sense of meaning really are. There are other theories about what might cause deja vu, each offering a different window into the complexity of consciousness. One particularly intriguing hypothesis focuses on the pathways that visual information takes as it travels from your eyes to your conscious awareness. Your brain processes visual information through multiple parallel pathways, some fast, some slow, some focused on motion, others on color, still others on spatial relationships and object recognition. Normally, these different streams of visual processing arrive at your conscious awareness at roughly the same time, creating a unified visual experience. But occasionally, one pathway might be slightly delayed, perhaps due to fatigue, distraction, or just random neural noise. When this happens, the same visual scene might be processed twice in quick succession, with the second processing feeling familiar because your brain has already analyzed the scene once, just milliseconds earlier. Imagine watching a movie where the same scene plays twice in a row. The second viewing would feel familiar not because you'd seen the movie before, but because you'd literally just watched that exact scene moments earlier. This dual processing theory suggests that deja vu might work similarly. Your brain processes a scene once through a fast pathway, then again through a slower pathway, creating the illusion of familiarity. Another theory focuses on attention and consciousness. Perhaps deja vu occurs when you briefly experience something without full awareness. You might glance at a scene while distracted by your phone, or take in your surroundings while lost in thought, and then experience it again moments later with your full attention. The first, barely conscious experience creates a trace of familiarity that makes the second, fully conscious experience feel like a repetition. This attention based theory is particularly interesting because it connects to broader questions of awareness. How much of what we experience never reaches full conscious awareness? How many scenes do we process? People do we see? Sounds do we hear? Without ever becoming fully conscious of them? And could these subliminal experiences create traces that later influence our conscious experience in unexpected ways? Still another hypothesis suggests that deja vu happens when current situations resemble past experiences in abstract ways that your conscious mind can't identify, but your unconscious pattern recognition systems can detect. Maybe that foreign street you've never walked down has the same spatial layout as your childhood neighborhood, or the same quality of light as a classroom from decades ago, or the same acoustic properties as a place you visited once in a dream. Your brain is constantly detecting these kinds of deep structural similarities, often below the threshold of conscious awareness. The hippocampus, in particular, is remarkably good at identifying abstract patterns that connect seemingly unrelated experiences. It might recognize that two completely different situations share similar emotional tones or spatial relationships or temporal rhythms, even when the surface details are completely different. When your unconscious pattern recognition systems detect these deep similarities, they might trigger familiarity signals, even though your conscious mind can't identify what's familiar about the situation. The result would be that characteristic feeling of "I've been here before," coupled with the puzzling inability to remember when or where. Each of these theories captures something important about how your brain constructs your experience of the present moment. They remind us that consciousness isn't a simple spotlight illuminating reality as it really is. Instead, it's an incredibly complex process involving multiple brain systems working together. Thyllis systems for processing sensory information, for comparing current experiences to stored memories, for regulating attention and awareness, for adding emotional significance to events, for creating a coherent sense of self moving through time. Sometimes these systems work in perfect harmony, creating experiences that feel seamless and natural. But sometimes they get slightly out of sync, creating phenomena like déjà vu that reveal just how much invisible processing is happening behind the scenes of every moment of consciousness. There's something beautifully humbling about déjà vu when you think about it this way. It's a gentle reminder that your experience of reality is constructed, not simply given. Every moment of your waking life, your brain is performing countless calculations, comparisons, and constructions to create what feels like a seamless stream of consciousness. The fact that this process occasionally hiccups doesn't diminish its elegance. If anything, it makes it more remarkable. Consider the sheer complexity of what your brain accomplishes every second you're awake. Right now, as you listen to my voice, your auditory system is extracting meaningful patterns from pressure waves in the air. Your language centers are converting those patterns into words, then combining those words into sentences, then relating those sentences to concepts and ideas stored in your memory. Your visual system is processing light patterns to create your sense of your surroundings. Your body awareness systems are monitoring your physical state, your posture, your breathing, your comfort or discomfort. Your emotional systems are evaluating how you feel about what you're hearing and thinking. All of this happens simultaneously, automatically, and mostly unconsciously. Your brain integrates information from all these different systems to create what feels like a unified experience of being you right now in this particular moment and place. The fact that this integration occasionally produces something as strange as déjà vu is less a flaw than a testament to the ambitious complexity of what consciousness attempts to accomplish. Scientists have even managed to create artificial déjà vu in laboratory settings, which has helped them understand the phenomenon better. By stimulating specific regions of the temporal lobe with tiny electrical currents, researchers can sometimes induce that characteristic feeling of impossible familiarity. Participants will suddenly feel like they've been in the laboratory before, even though they know they're taking part in the experiment for the first time. These experiments reveal that déjà vu isn't just a quirk of memory or a mysterious psychological phenomenon. It's a window into some of the most fundamental processes of consciousness. It shows us that our sense of time, our distinction between past and present, our feelings of familiarity and novelty, all of these seemingly basic aspects of experience depend on precise coordination between different brain systems. Dr. Akira O'Connor at the University of St. Andrews has conducted particularly fascinating research in this area using a clever experimental setup to induce deja vu like experiences in healthy volunteers. Participants listen to lists of related words like bed, pillow, dream, blanket, but the key word that connects them all, sleep, in this example, is never presented. Later, when that missing word is finally presented, participants often experience a strong sense of familiarity, even though they know they haven't heard it before in the experiment. This research suggests that deja vu might involve conflicts between two different types of memory processes, the feeling of familiarity versus actual recollection of specific details. When these two systems give contradictory signals, the result is that strange experience of feeling like you remember something while simultaneously knowing that you don't. This research has practical implications too. Understanding deja vu better helps neurosurgeons who operate on patients with temporal lobe epilepsy. For instance, they need to remove damaged brain tissue while preserving the healthy tissue responsible for normal memory function. The more precisely they can map these systems, the better they can help their patients maintain their ability to form new memories and distinguish between past and present experiences. But beyond its clinical relevance, studying deja vu touches on some of the deepest questions in science and philosophy. What is time? How do we distinguish between past and present? What makes an experience feel real? How does subjective experience arise from objective brain processes? How do we maintain a sense of continuous identity over time despite constant change in our brains and bodies? Deja vu sits right at the intersection of all these mysteries. It's a phenomenon that challenges our common sense understanding of memory and time while simultaneously demonstrating the remarkable sophistication of the systems that normally handle these challenges so smoothly we're unaware of them. It's also worth noting that different cultures have understood deja vu in vastly different ways throughout history. Some have seen it as evidence of past lives, the soul recognizing places and people from previous incarnations. Others have interpreted it as glimpses into parallel universes or alternate timelines. Still others have viewed it as prophetic visions, memories of events that are destined to happen in the future. The French psychic researcher Émile Boirac, who coined the term déjà vu in 1876, was fascinated by what he saw as evidence of precognition, the ability to see into the future. He thought people might be remembering prophetic dreams or psychic visions when they experienced that uncanny familiarity. While we now understand deja vu differently, there's something poetic about how this strange little glitch in consciousness has inspired such diverse and creative interpretations across human societies. Each culture's interpretation reveals something about their deeper beliefs, about time, memory, identity, and the nature of existence itself. The fact that deja vu has been universal enough to inspire explanations across cultures suggests that it touches something fundamental about human consciousness, something that transcends specific cultural or historical contexts. Modern scientific understanding offers more naturalistic explanations, but it doesn't necessarily diminish the wonder of the phenomenon. If anything, understanding how deja vu works makes it more remarkable not less. The fact that consciousness is complex enough to occasionally confuse itself about time and memory is extraordinary. The fact that a temporary misalignment in neural timing can create such a profound subjective experience reveals something beautiful about the relationship between objective brain processes and subjective experience. As you listen to this, you might be wondering about your own experiences with deja vu. If you have experienced it, try to remember not just the cognitive puzzle of it, but the emotional quality. How did it feel? Was it unsettling, fascinating, moving, or all of these at once? Did it last for seconds or longer? Did it happen in a specific type of situation? Or did it seem completely random? Some people report that deja vu happens more often when they're tired or stressed, which makes sense if it involves timing errors in brain systems that depend on precise coordination. Others notice it more in certain environments, new places that have some subtle familiarity, transitional moments like entering a building or starting a conversation, times when they're not fully focused on their surroundings, but not completely distracted either. There are also individual differences in how people experience deja vu. Some describe it as primarily visual, watch a scene that looks familiar. Others experience it as more holistic, involving all their senses and their emotional state. Some people find it pleasant and intriguing, while others find it unsettling or even frightening. These differences might reflect variations in how different people's brains are organized, or differences in how they interpret unusual internal experiences. There's also a related phenomenon called jamais vu, never seen, where familiar things suddenly feel strange and unfamiliar. You might look at a word you've written thousands of times and suddenly feel like you've never seen it before, questioning whether it's even spelled correctly. You might walk into your own bedroom and feel like a stranger in your own space, seeing everything with fresh eyes as if encountering it for the first time. This is essentially the opposite of deja vu, and it might involve similar brain systems getting confused in the other direction. Instead of unfamiliar experiences being tagged as familiar, familiar experiences get tagged as unfamiliar. The result is that disorienting sensation of estrangement from your own life, where the most ordinary things suddenly seem foreign and mysterious. Both déjà vu and jamais vu remind us that our sense of familiarity and strangeness isn't as fixed as it seems. These feelings depend on complex neural processes that can be disrupted or confused in various ways, revealing that even our most basic experiences of recognition and novelty are active constructions rather than passive recordings. This brings us to something profound about human consciousness. How much of what we experience as reality is actually interpretation? Your brain doesn't just receive sensory information like a recording device, it actively interprets that information, comparing it to past experiences, predicting what might come next, filling in gaps and ambiguities, creating emotional responses, and weaving everything together into a coherent narrative about what's happening. Most of the time, this interpretation is so seamless that you don't notice it's happening, but occasionally, something like deja vu pulls back the curtain and shows you just how much creative work your brain is doing every moment of every day. It reveals that even the most basic aspects of experience, like knowing whether you've been somewhere before, depend on sophisticated neural processes that can occasionally get confused. Consider how this might apply to other aspects of your experience. When you recognize a friend's voice on the phone, your brain is making countless rapid comparisons to stored acoustic patterns, factoring in things like phone quality, background noise, your friend's current emotional state, and even your expectations about who might be calling. When you feel like you understand what someone is saying, you're not just processing words, you're integrating linguistic information with context, body language, your knowledge of the speaker, your assumptions about their intentions, and your expectations about what they might mean. When you feel confident or uncertain about something, you're experiencing your brain's assessment of its own processing, its evaluation of how reliable its conclusions are based on the quality and quantity of available information. When you have an intuitive feeling about a situation, you might be experiencing the output of unconscious pattern recognition systems that have detected regularities too subtle for conscious analysis. All of these experiences feel immediate and direct, just like deja vu feels like genuine memory. But they're all constructions, all active interpretations that your brain creates so quickly and smoothly that they feel like direct perception of reality itself. This perspective can be both unsettling and liberating. Unsettling because it suggests that your experience of reality is less direct and more constructed than you might have thought. Every confidence, every certainty, every feeling of familiarity or strangeness depends on neural processes that are sophisticated but fallible, elegant but occasionally prone to confusion. But it's also liberating because it reveals the incredible sophistication of your mind and the active role you play in creating your experience of the world. You're not a passive recipient of reality, you're an active participant in its construction. Your consciousness is not a spotlight illuminating what's already there, but a creative process that brings experience into being moment by moment. From this view, deja vu isn't just a curiosity or an amusing glitch. It's a teacher showing you something important about the nature of consciousness itself. It demonstrates that time, memory, familiarity, and reality are all active constructions rather than passive recordings. And it does so in a way that's accessible to ordinary experience, not requiring sophisticated instruments or years of training to observe. This connects to broader themes in neuroscience and cognitive psychology about the difference between how things seem and how they actually work. Vision seems like a passive process of seeing what's there, but it actually involves active construction of visual scenes from fragmentary information, with your brain filling in blind spots, enhancing certain features while ignoring others, and creating the impression of a complete detailed visual world from relatively sparse input. Memory seems like retrieval of stored experiences, but it actually involves active reconstruction that can change the memories themselves each time you remember them. Your brain doesn't store complete recordings of past events, it stores fragments that get reassembled differently each time, influenced by your current state, recent experiences, and countless other factors. Understanding seems like absorption of information, but it actually involves active integration and interpretation that depends as much on what you bring to the information as on the information itself. Two people can read the same text or hear the same lecture and come away with completely different understandings, not because one of them wasn't paying attention, but because understanding requires relating new information to existing knowledge in ways that are unique to each individual. Deja vu fits into this pattern perfectly. It seems like genuine memory of past experience, but it's actually a temporary confusion in the systems that normally distinguish between past and present. The fact that it can fool us so completely, but that it can create such a convincing sense of familiarity for genuinely novel experiences shows just how sophisticated and convincing our brain's constructions can be, even when they're based on processing errors. This has implications that extend far beyond neuroscience. It touches on questions about the nature of knowledge, the reliability of experience, the relationship between subjective and objective reality, and what it means to understand anything at all. If our most basic experiences are constructions rather than direct perceptions, what does that mean for our confidence in what we think we know? These are deep philosophical waters, but they're also practical questions that affect how you live your daily life. How much should you trust your immediate impressions of situations and people? How should you respond when your experience seems to conflict with external evidence? How do you balance confidence in your own perspective with openness to the possibility that you might be misinterpreting things? Deja vu offers a gentle reminder that these questions don't have simple answers. Your experience of reality is both remarkably reliable. Most of the time, your brain's constructions accurately reflect what's actually happening in the world and occasionally fallible in subtle ways that you might not even notice until something unusual happens to draw your attention to the construction process itself. This balance between reliability and fallibility might actually be optimal for navigating a complex world. Perfect accuracy would be computationally expensive and might make you too rigid to adapt to changing circumstances. You'd spend so much energy double checking every impression that you'd be paralyzed by analysis. Perfect flexibility, on the other hand, would make it impossible to develop stable beliefs and expectations. You'd be constantly starting from scratch, unable to learn from experience or develop expertise. The systems that create deja vu, with their occasional glitches and confusions, might be the inevitable price of having memory and perception systems that are both accurate enough to be useful and flexible enough to adapt to new situations. The occasional false sense of familiarity might be worth it for systems that can usually distinguish reliably between past and present, familiar and novel, safe and dangerous. Scientists continue to study deja vu using increasingly sophisticated tools. Modern brain imaging techniques like functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, and electroencephalography, EEG, allow researchers to watch neural activity in real time as people experience that strange sense of familiarity. They've identified specific patterns of activation in the temporal lobe and connected regions that seem to correspond to the phenomenon. Some researchers are even developing computational models of how deja vu might arise, using artificial neural networks to simulate the kinds of temporal confusions that might lead to false familiarity signals. While these models are still quite simple compared to the complexity of actual brains, they're helping scientists refine their theories about the specific mechanisms involved. There's also growing interest in how deja vu relates to other altered states of consciousness. Some people report experiencing it more frequently during meditation, in dreams, or in other states where normal waking consciousness is modified. This might be because these states involve changes in the same brain systems that regulate memory and temporal experience. The relationship between deja vu and dreams is particularly intriguing. Dreams often involve strange juxtapositions of familiar and unfamiliar elements, impossible combinations of people and places from different periods of your life. Sometimes you might dream about a place that feels completely familiar in the dream, but doesn't correspond to anywhere you've actually been. This dream familiarity might involve similar neural mechanisms to déjà vu, suggesting that both phenomena reveal something about how your brain constructs feelings of familiarity and strangeness. Understanding déjà vu better might also have implications for conditions like Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, where memory systems become progressively disrupted. If scientists can understand how healthy brains normally distinguish between past and present experience, they might develop better ways to help when these systems break down. They might also gain insights into how to preserve the systems that create our sense of continuity and identity, even as memory becomes impaired. But perhaps most importantly, studying deja vu is expanding our understanding of what it means to be conscious at all. Every time you experience anything, the warmth of your blanket, the sound of my voice, your own thoughts about what I'm saying, your brain is performing incredibly complex integrative processes to create that unified experience. Deja vu offers a glimpse into these processes, a moment where the usual seamless integration gets briefly disrupted, revealing some of the machinery underneath. This connects to broader questions that neuroscientists and philosophers are grappling with, questions that go to the heart of what it means to be human. How does subjective experience arise from objective brain activity? Why do you experience yourself as a unified conscious being rather than a collection of separate processes? How do you maintain a sense of continuous identity over time, despite the fact that your brain and body are constantly changing? These are among the deepest questions humans can ask, and phenomena like deja vu provide valuable clues. They show us that consciousness isn't a thing, but a process, an ongoing construction that depends on the coordinated activity of many different brain systems. When one of these systems gets briefly confused, the whole construction shifts, and we get a temporary glimpse into ordinarily invisible processes. The hard problem of consciousness, the question of why there should be subjective experience at all, remains one of the greatest mysteries in science. Why should neural activity feel like anything? Why should there be an inner experience of seeing red or feeling happy or remembering your grandmother's voice? Deja vu doesn't solve this mystery, but it offers valuable insights into how subjective experiences are constructed and how they can be disrupted. As you continue listening, you might notice that even this conversation is an example of the brain's constructive activity. You're not passively receiving my words like a recording device. Instead, you're actively interpreting them, relating them to your own experiences and knowledge, perhaps agreeing or disagreeing with various points, letting your mind wander to related thoughts and memories, maybe even experiencing moments where something I say feels particularly familiar or resonant, though you can't quite place why. The understanding you're developing isn't just a copy of what I'm saying. It's a unique construction that depends on who you are, what you've experienced, how your particular brain works, what you've been thinking about lately, and countless other factors. Two people listening to this exact same recording might come away with completely different insights, different emotional responses, different questions, different connections to their own experiences with deja vu or consciousness more generally. This is true of all learning and understanding. When you read a book, have a conversation, or observe something in the world, you're not just recording information like a computer downloading a file. You're actively integrating new information into your existing understanding, creating new connections and associations, sometimes even changing your fundamental beliefs about how the world works. The process is creative, not just receptive. Deja vu reminds us that this constructive process extends even to our most basic experiences of time and familiarity. The feeling that something is happening now versus having happened before isn't just a simple fact about the world that your brain passively registers. It's an interpretation your brain creates by comparing current experiences to stored patterns and memories. And like all interpretations, it can occasionally be wrong in interesting ways. This might seem abstract, but it has practical implications for how you understand your own experience. When you feel certain about something, that certainty is partially based on how confident your brain's various processing systems are about their interpretations. When you feel confused or uncertain, that might reflect genuine ambiguity in the information you're processing, or it might reflect the normal operation of brain systems that are designed to flag when their interpretations might be unreliable. Understanding this can actually be quite comforting. It means that confusion and uncertainty aren't necessarily signs that you're doing something wrong. They might just be your brain's way of acknowledging the complexity of the situation you're dealing with. Similarly, that strange, disorienting feeling of deja vu isn't a malfunction or a sign that something is wrong with your memory. It's a glimpse into normally invisible processes that are working all the time to create your experience of the world. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how remarkable this is. Right now, as you listen to my voice, your brain is performing millions of calculations per second. It's processing acoustic information to extract phonemes and words, integrating those words into meaningful sentences, relating those sentences to concepts and ideas you already know, maintaining awareness of your physical surroundings, regulating your breathing and heart rate, monitoring your emotional state, and countless other processes we don't even have names for yet. Your visual system is constructing a three-dimensional model of your environment from two-dimensional retinal images, automatically adjusting for changes in lighting, tracking moving objects, and integrating visual information with input from your other senses. Your balance system is constantly monitoring your orientation in space, making tiny adjustments to keep you stable even when you're lying still. Your immune system is patrolling for threats. Your digestive system is processing whatever you've eaten. Your circulatory system is delivering oxygen and nutrients to every cell in your body. All of this happens simultaneously, automatically, and mostly unconsciously. You're not consciously thinking about how to decode the sounds I'm making into words, or how to relate my words to ideas, or how to maintain your sense of being a continuous self while all this processing is happening. It just flows seamlessly, creating what feels like a direct, immediate experience of listening and understanding. Deja vu is special because it's one of the few ways this seamless process occasionally becomes visible. For just a few seconds, you become aware that your experience of reality is constructed rather than simply given. The familiar becomes strange, or the strange becomes familiar, and suddenly you're reminded that even your most basic sense of what's real and what's memory depends on complex processes happening below the level of consciousness. This connects to broader themes in neuroscience and cognitive psychology about the difference between how things seem and how they actually work. Your experience of being a unified self, moving through time, depends on systems that are constantly integrating information from different sources, creating the illusion of continuity from what is actually a series of discrete moments of neural processing. Your experience of free will bias, the sense that you're choosing what to think about or how to respond, might depend on systems that create the feeling of agency by monitoring the relationships between your intentions and your actions, even though the actual causal relationships might be more complex than they seem. Your experience of having stable beliefs and preferences might depend on systems that create consistency from what are actually dynamic, context dependent processes. Deja vu fits into this pattern perfectly. It seems like genuine memory of past experience, but it's actually a temporary confusion in the systems that normally distinguish between past and present. The fact that it can fool us so completely shows just how convincing our brain's constructions can be, even when they're based on processing errors. This has implications that extend far beyond neuroscience into philosophy, psychology, and even practical questions about how to live your life. If your experience of reality is constructed rather than directly perceived, what does that mean for your confidence in your own judgments? How should you respond when your experience conflicts with other evidence? How do you balance trust in your own perspective with openness to the possibility that you might be wrong? These questions don't have simple answers, but deja vu offers some gentle guidance. It suggests that your experience is generally reliable, but occasionally fallible in ways that you might not be able to detect from the inside. The solution isn't to doubt everything minds that would be paralyzing and unnecessary. Instead, it's to hold your interpretations lightly, to remain curious about alternative possibilities, and to appreciate the remarkable sophistication of the systems that usually serve you so well. Consider how this might apply to other aspects of your life. When you have a strong first impression of someone, that impression is based on incredibly rapid processing of countless subtle cues, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, clothing choices, and many others. Most of the time, these first impressions contain valuable information, but sometimes they might be influenced by irrelevant factors: your mood, recent experiences, unconscious biases, or chance resemblances to other people you've known. When you feel confident about a decision, that confidence reflects your brain's assessment of the quality of your reasoning and the reliability of your information. But sometimes that assessment might be influenced by factors you're not aware of. NSO, then options were presented, what examples come easily to mind, or subtle emotional associations that don't reflect the actual merits of different choices. When you remember something clearly and vividly, that memory probably contains accurate information about past events. But as we've seen with deja vu, the feeling of memory can sometimes be decoupled from actual past experience. Even normal memories are reconstructed each time you remember them, potentially changing in subtle ways that you might not notice. Understanding these limitations doesn't mean you should doubt everything or become paralyzed by uncertainty. Instead, it means appreciating the remarkable sophistication of your mental processes while remaining humble about their limitations. It means being curious about alternative perspectives, open to new information, and grateful for the extraordinary gift of consciousness, even when it occasionally confuses itself. There's something deeply beautiful about this perspective on human experience. It suggests that you're not a passive observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. Every moment of your experience is a collaborative construction between your brain, your environment, and processes we're only beginning to understand. You're constantly creating meaning, finding patterns, making connections, and weaving the raw materials of sensation and memory into the rich tapestry of conscious experience. Deja vu is just one small example of this creative process, but it's a particularly poetic one. In those brief moments of impossible familiarity, you're experiencing your own consciousness in the act of creation, caught in the moment of weaving the story of your experience from the threads of sensation, memory, and interpretation. The research on deja vu also reveals something profound about the nature of scientific inquiry itself. For centuries, this phenomenon was purely subjective. People could describe their experiences, but there was no way to study what was actually happening in their brains when it occurred. The development of techniques for monitoring neural activity in real time has opened up entirely new ways of understanding consciousness and subjective experience. This represents a broader shift in neuroscience and psychology towards studying phenomena that were once considered purely philosophical or spiritual. Questions about the nature of consciousness, the relationship between mind and brain, the construction of reality and identity, these are no longer just topics for philosophical speculation. They're becoming subjects for empirical investigation, using increasingly sophisticated tools to peer inside the black box of the mind. Yet this scientific progress doesn't diminish the mystery and wonder of consciousness. If anything, it deepens it. The more we learn about how the brain works, the more remarkable it becomes that subjective experience exists at all. The fact that arrangements of matter can give rise to inner worlds of sensation, emotion, memory, and thought seems no less miraculous for being partially understood. Deja vu sits at the intersection of these objective and subjective approaches to understanding consciousness. It's a phenomenon that can be studied scientifically. MEIS researchers can monitor brain activity, develop theories about neural mechanisms, and even create artificial versions in laboratory settings. But it's also irreducibly subjective, the actual experience of deja vu, that strange feeling of impossible familiarity, can only be known from the inside. This dual nature makes deja vu a particularly valuable window into consciousness more generally. It shows us how subjective experiences can have objective neural correlates without being reducible to those correlates. Understanding what happens in your brain during deja vu doesn't eliminate the subjective experience, that deepens our appreciation for how remarkable that experience is. As we continue exploring these ideas together, you might find yourself thinking about consciousness and reality in new ways. Perhaps you'll pay more attention to the constructive nature of your own experience, noticing moments when your brain is actively interpreting rather than passively recording. Perhaps you'll develop a deeper appreciation for the sophistication of processes that usually operate so smoothly you're unaware of them. Or perhaps you'll simply find comfort in knowing that those occasional moments of impossible familiarity aren't signs of something wrong with your memory or your mind. They're glimpses into the extraordinary complexity of consciousness itself, windows into the remarkable processes that create your experience of being you. The cross cultural research on deja vu reveals fascinating variations in how different societies understand and interpret the phenomenon. In some Buddhist traditions, for instance, experiences resembling deja vu are sometimes interpreted as memories from past lives, breaking through into current awareness. The detailed descriptions in some Buddhist texts of these experiences closely match what we now call deja vu, but the interpretive framework is completely different from modern scientific understanding. Some indigenous cultures have concepts that encompass deja vu like experiences within broader frameworks of cyclical time and spiritual connection to ancestral memories. These interpretations aren't necessarily incompatible with neuroscientific explanations, they're simply different ways of making meaning from the same underlying phenomenology. What's particularly interesting is that the core experience seems to be universal. That strange moment of impossible familiarity occurs across all cultures that have been studied, but the meaning people assign to that experience varies dramatically, shaped by their cultural beliefs about time, memory, identity, and the nature of reality itself. This universality of the experience, coupled with diversity of interpretation, tells us something important about human consciousness. It suggests that we share fundamental neural architectures that create similar patterns of subjective experience, but we differ dramatically in how we understand and contextualize those experiences. Modern neuroscience offers one framework for understanding deja vu, but it's not necessarily the only valid framework. A Buddhist might experience deja vu as a reminder of the interconnectedness of all existence. A poet might experience it as a moment of touching the eternal patterns that underlie temporal experience. A physicist might experience it as evidence of the strange nature of time itself. Each of these interpretations might capture something true about the phenomenon, even if they can't all be literally accurate. The neuroscientific explanation tells us about mechanisms, but it doesn't necessarily exhaust the meaning or significance of the experience for the person having it. This connects to broader questions about the relationship between scientific and other ways of knowing. Science excels at explaining how things work, but it may be less complete when it comes to questions of meaning, purpose, and significance. Understanding the neural mechanisms of deja vu doesn't necessarily tell us what the experience means for someone's understanding of themselves or their place in the world. This isn't to suggest that scientific and other approaches to understanding consciousness are incompatible. Rather, they might be complementary, each offering insights that the others miss. A complete understanding of deja vu might require both neuroscientific insights about brain mechanisms and phenomenological insights about the structure and meaning of subjective experience. The research on individual differences in deja vu susceptibility has revealed some fascinating patterns. People who score higher on measures of absorption, the tendency to become deeply immersed in experiences, tend to report more frequent deja vu. This might be because absorption involves the same kinds of altered relationships between attention and memory that contribute to deja vu. Similarly, people who are more prone to fantasy and imagination tend to report more deja vu experiences. This could reflect differences in how their brains process and distinguish between imagined and real experiences. If the boundary between imagination and memory is more permeable in some people, they might be more susceptible to the kinds of confusions that create deja vu. There are also intriguing connections between deja vu and creativity. Some studies suggest that highly creative individuals experience deja vu more frequently than average. This might be because creativity involves the ability to make novel connections between disparate ideas and experiences the same kind of flexible associative thinking that might make the brain more prone to temporal confusions in memory processing. The relationship between déjà vu and travel is particularly interesting. Many people report experiencing déjà vu more frequently when they're in new places, especially when traveling to foreign countries or unfamiliar environments. This might seem paradoxical. Why would genuinely novel experiences be more likely to feel familiar? One possibility is that travel creates optimal conditions for déjà vu by combining high levels of novelty with fatigue, stress, and altered routines. When your brain's normal processing patterns are disrupted by jet lag, unfamiliar foods, different sleep schedules, and constant sensory novelty, the systems that distinguish between familiar and unfamiliar experiences might become more prone to errors. Another possibility is that travel exposes you to environments that share subtle similarities with places you've been before, but in combinations that your conscious mind doesn't recognize. A street in Prague might have the same proportions as a street from your childhood, but with completely different architectural details. Your unconscious pattern recognition systems might detect the similarity while your conscious mind remains unaware of it, creating that characteristic sense of familiarity without identifiable memory. The temporal dynamics of déjà vu experiences themselves are also fascinating. Most episodes last only a few seconds, but those seconds can feel stretched and compressed simultaneously. Time seems to slow down during the experience. You become acutely aware of every detail of your surroundings, while also feeling accelerated, as if you're rushing through a familiar sequence of events. This distortion of temporal experience during déjà vu might reflect the same neural processes that create the phenomenon in the first place. If déjà vu involves confusion in the systems that tag experiences as past or present, it makes sense that the experience of time itself would be affected. You're simultaneously in the present moment and in what feels like a memory, creating a temporal paradox that consciousness struggles to resolve. Some people report that during intense déjà vu episodes, they feel like they can almost predict what will happen next, as if they're remembering a sequence of events rather than experiencing them for the first time. But these predictions virtually never come true in any specific way. This suggests that the feeling of memory during déjà vu is quite different from actual memory, which can often provide accurate information about what happened next in past situations. The study of déjà vu has also contributed to our understanding of how memory consolidation works. When you experience something new, that experience doesn't immediately become a stable memory. Instead, it goes through a process of consolidation that can take hours, days, or even weeks to complete. During this consolidation process, the memory is particularly vulnerable to interference and change. Some researchers think deja vu might sometimes occur when this consolidation process gets disrupted or confused. Perhaps a current experience briefly gets processed as if it's already in the process of being consolidated as a memory, creating the strange sense that you've experienced it before, even though it's happening for the first time. This connects to broader research on how sleep and dreaming contribute to memory consolidation. During sleep, your brain replays and reorganizes the experiences of the day, transferring information from temporary storage in the hippocampus to more permanent storage in the cortex. Dreams might be a side effect of this process, as random fragments of memories get activated and combined in novel ways. If déjà vu involves similar processes of memory activation and combination, it might share some neural mechanisms with dreaming. This could explain why both déjà vu and dreams often involve that strange quality of familiar unfamiliarity, things that feel both known and unknown simultaneously. The relationship between déjà vu and various psychiatric and neurological conditions has provided additional insights into the phenomenon. People with anxiety disorders sometimes report experiencing déjà vu more frequently, which might reflect the heightened state of alertness and pattern detection that often accompanies anxiety. When your brain is constantly scanning for threats and anomalies, it might be more likely to detect false patterns or misinterpret normal experiences as significant. Similarly, people experiencing depression sometimes report changes in how they experience déjà vu. The emotional flatness that often accompanies depression might dampen the characteristic emotional intensity of déjà vu, making it feel more like a cognitive curiosity than a profound experience. This suggests that the emotional dimensions of déjà vu are an integral part of the phenomenon, not just side effects of the underlying memory confusion. Research on psychedelic substances has also shed light on déjà vu and related phenomena. Many psychedelics can produce experiences that share some characteristics with déjà vu, profound feelings of familiarity with novel experiences, altered relationships between memory and perception, and distortions of temporal experience. Studying these chemically induced alterations of consciousness might help researchers understand the neural mechanisms that normally prevent such experiences. The development of virtual reality technology has opened up new possibilities for studying déjà vu in controlled laboratory settings. Researchers can now create precisely controlled environments and monitor people's brain activity as they navigate virtual spaces. By manipulating subtle features of virtual environments, they might be able to create conditions that reliably trigger déjà vu like experiences. This kind of research could help distinguish between different theories about what causes déjà vu. If the phenomenon is primarily about visual processing delays, then specific types of visual manipulations in virtual reality should be able to induce it. If it's more about abstract pattern recognition, then manipulating spatial layouts or temporal sequences might be more effective. As virtual reality becomes more sophisticated and widespread, it might also become a tool for helping people understand their own consciousness. Imagine being able to experience carefully designed virtual environments that demonstrate various aspects of perception, memory, and attention. You could directly experience how your brain constructs your sense of reality, including phenomena like déjà vu, in controlled and educational ways. The implications of déjà vu research extend into artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. As AI systems become more sophisticated, researchers are beginning to grapple with questions about whether artificial systems might experience something analogous to consciousness. Could an AI system experience something like déjà vu? What would that tell us about the nature of the phenomenon? Current AI systems are very different from human brains, but they do involve complex pattern recognition and memory processes. As these systems become more complex and begin to model temporal relationships between experiences, they might develop their own forms of temporal confusion analogous to déjà vu. Studying these artificial phenomena might shed light on the fundamental principles underlying consciousness and subjective experience. The philosophical implications of déjà vu research are equally fascinating. The phenomenon challenges common sense assumptions about the nature of time, memory, and identity. If our sense of temporal continuity can be disrupted so easily, what does that tell us about the nature of time itself? If our memories can create such convincing illusions of familiarity, how confident should we be in our other memories? These questions connect to ancient philosophical puzzles about skepticism and knowledge. How can we know anything for certain if our most basic experiences can be misleading? But rather than leading to paralyzing doubt, deja vu might actually point toward a more nuanced understanding of knowledge and certainty. Perhaps the goal isn't to achieve perfect certainty about our experiences, but to appreciate the remarkable sophistication of the systems that usually serve us so well while remaining humble about their limitations. Deja vu reminds us that consciousness is a process, not a thing, in ongoing construction that occasionally reveals its own constructive nature. As you've been listening to this exploration of deja vu, you might have noticed how the topic connects to virtually every aspect of human experience: memory, perception, emotion, consciousness, culture, philosophy, even artificial intelligence, and the nature of time itself. This is one of the remarkable things about studying consciousness. Every phenomenon, no matter how specific or seemingly simple, opens up into vast networks of connection with every other aspect of mind and reality. Deja vu might seem like just a curious glitch in memory processing, but as we've seen, it's actually a window into some of the deepest questions humans can ask. What is the nature of time? How does consciousness arise from brain activity? What makes an experience feel real? How do we construct our sense of self and identity? How should we understand the relationship between scientific and other ways of knowing? These questions don't have simple answers, but phenomena like deja vu provide valuable clues and perspectives. They remind us that consciousness is far stranger and more wonderful than our everyday experience suggests. They show us that even our most basic assumptions about reality depend on sophisticated processes that can occasionally be disrupted in illuminating ways. As we near the end of our exploration tonight, it's worth reflecting on what deja vu teaches us about wonder and mystery in an age of scientific explanation. Some people worry that understanding the neural basis of experiences like deja vu will diminish their mystery and beauty, that science somehow drains the magic out of consciousness by explaining it in terms of brain circuits and neural timing. But I think the opposite is true. The more we understand about how consciousness works, the more remarkable it becomes. The fact that a few pounds of neural tissue can create your entire experienced world, complete with colors that don't exist in the physics of light, sounds that are constructed from pressure waves, emotions that transform the meaning of everything around you, memories that can occasionally confuse themselves about their own temporal location. This is far more amazing than any supernatural explanation could be. The universe somehow arranged matter in such a way that it can contemplate itself, experience wonder, ask questions about its own nature, form relationships across vast distances of space and time, create art and music and stories, fall in love, feel compassion for strangers, and even occasionally confuse itself about whether it's experienced something before. This is the deepest mystery of all, and understanding deja vu brings us a tiny bit closer to grappling with it. Every time someone experiences that uncanny flash of familiarity in an unfamiliar place, They're participating in one of the most profound phenomena in the known universe, the emergence of subjective experience from physical processes. We still don't fully understand how this emergence works. While objective brain activity gives rise to subjective experience, remains one of the greatest unsolved problems in science. We can map the brain circuits involved in memory and familiarity. We can create computational models of how these circuits might malfunction. We can even artificially stimulate brain regions to create deja vu like experiences. But the hard question remains, why should any of this feel like anything at all? Why should there be subjective experience rather than just information processing? These questions keep philosophers and neuroscientists awake at night, but they also point to something beautiful about the human condition. You are not just a passive observer of reality, you are an active participant in its creation. Every moment of your experience is a collaborative construction between your brain, your environment, and processes we're only beginning to understand. Deja vu is just one small example of this collaboration, but it's a particularly poetic one. In those brief moments of impossible familiarity, you're experiencing your own consciousness in the act of creation, caught in the moment of weaving the story of your experience from the threads of sensation, memory, and interpretation. The fact that this process occasionally produces something as strange and wonderful as deja vu is a reminder that consciousness is not a perfect recording device, but a creative, dynamic process. It's a process that can surprise itself, confuse itself, and occasionally reveal its own constructive nature in moments of impossible familiarity. As you settle deeper into comfort tonight, perhaps listening from bed with your eyes closed, or relaxing in a comfortable chair as the evening settles around you, I invite you to think differently about those occasional moments when reality seems to hiccup, when the familiar becomes strange, or the strange becomes familiar, when time seems to fold in on itself and create impossible moments of recognition. Rather than dismissing these experiences as mere curiosities or glitches, you might see them as glimpses into the extraordinary processes that create your every waking moment. They're reminders that consciousness is an ongoing achievement, not a given means, a dynamic process that requires the coordinated activity of billions of neurons working together to create your unique experience of being you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll appreciate that even the glitches are beautiful. They remind us that consciousness isn't a perfect machine, but a creative, living process, one that occasionally surprises itself with impossible moments of familiarity, sudden flashes of strangeness, or the gentle confusion of temporal loops that make us question the very nature of time and memory. The research on deja vu continues to evolve, with new technologies and theoretical frameworks constantly opening up fresh perspectives on this ancient mystery. Brain stimulation techniques are becoming more precise, allowing researchers to target specific neural circuits with increasing accuracy. Computational models are becoming more sophisticated, incorporating advances from artificial intelligence and machine learning to better simulate the complex dynamics of memory and temporal processing. Future research might help us understand not just how deja vu happens, but why it happens, but evolutionary or developmental purposes it might serve, if any. Some researchers speculate that the neural mechanisms underlying deja vu might be side effects of systems that evolved for other purposes, like the ability to rapidly assess whether situations are familiar or novel, safe or dangerous. Others suggest that déjà vu might actually serve a function in memory consolidation or pattern recognition, helping to calibrate the systems that distinguish between genuine memories and current experiences. Perhaps occasional false alarm yes moments when current experiences feel familiar, even though they're not masked, are the price of having systems that are usually very good at making these crucial distinctions. Whatever the answers turn out to be, the journey of discovery itself is part of what makes consciousness so remarkable. We are beings capable of studying our own experience, of developing theories about our own minds, of using the very consciousness we're trying to understand consciousness itself. This recursive quality of consciousness, awareness being aware of itself, creates fascinating philosophical puzzles and practical challenges for researchers. How do you study subjective experience objectively? How do you use consciousness to understand consciousness without circular reasoning? How do you balance first person reports of experiences like deja vu with third person measurements of brain activity? These methodological challenges are part of what makes consciousness research so exciting and so difficult. They require new forms of collaboration between different disciplines, neuroscience and philosophy, psychology and physics, computer science and phenomenology. The study of deja vu exemplifies this interdisciplinary approach, drawing insights from many different fields to build a more complete understanding of the phenomenon. As our exploration draws toward its close, I want to return to something personal about deja vu that many people recognize, but that scientific explanations don't always capture the sense of profound meaning that often accompanies these experiences. Even when you know that deja vu is probably just a temporary confusion in memory processing, it can still feel like something more moment of touching something deeper about the nature of existence. This feeling isn't necessarily incompatible with scientific understanding. Perhaps what feels meaningful about deja vu is precisely what it reveals about the nature of consciousness, the way it momentarily lifts the veil on the constructive processes that are always operating, but usually invisible. In those brief seconds of impossible familiarity, you're directly experiencing the creative, interpretive nature of consciousness itself. Or perhaps the meaning comes from the reminder that time and memory are more mysterious than our everyday experience suggests. In a universe where space and time are interwoven, where quantum mechanics reveals strange connections between distant events, where the nature of reality itself remains deeply puzzling, maybe deja vu offers a glimpse into aspects of existence that our ordinary consciousness can barely grasp. These interpretations might not be scientifically verifiable, but they point to something important about human experience. We are meaning making creatures, constantly seeking significance and connection in our experiences. The fact that a simple glitch in memory processing can feel so profound tells us something about our deep need to understand our place in the larger patterns of existence. Whether you experience deja vu frequently or rarely, whether you find it fascinating or unsettling, whether you interpret it scientifically or spiritually, it serves as a reminder of the extraordinary nature of ordinary consciousness. Every moment you're awake, your brain is performing computational feats that rival any computer, creating experiences of stunning richness and complexity from the simple electrochemical activity of neurons. The fact that this process occasionally produces something as strange as deja vu is perhaps less remarkable than the fact that it usually works so seamlessly. The real miracle isn't that consciousness sometimes confuses itself about time and memory as, it's that consciousness exists at all, that the universe has evolved beings capable of experience, wonder, confusion, and the drive to understand themselves. Whatever is happening in your particular corner of the world tonight, whether you're drifting towards sleep or remaining alert to ponder these ideas, whether you're listening in a busy city or a quiet countryside, know that your brain is continuing its remarkable work of creating your experience moment by moment. Sometimes that work proceeds so smoothly you're not aware of it at all. Sometimes it produces that strange, wonderful phenomenon we call déjà vu, a temporary tangle in the threads of time and memory that reminds you just how extraordinary ordinary consciousness really is. And in those moments of impossible familiarity, you're not experiencing something broken or wrong. You're experiencing something beautiful. Your glimpse into the creative, constructive nature of consciousness itself. You're witnessing your own mind in the act of creating reality, caught in a moment where the usual distinctions between past and present, familiar and novel, memory and experience become beautifully, mysteriously blurred. Thank you for joining me on this gentle journey into the mystery of deja vu. If you enjoyed exploring these ideas together, I'd love to hear where in the world you're listening from and whether you've had your own experiences with that uncanny sense of impossible familiarity. You can leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or your own deja vu experiences. Give this video a like if it brought you some peace or wonder, and subscribe if you'd like to join me for more quiet explorations of the beautiful mysteries that science reveals about our world and ourselves. Remember that each of you listening represents a unique experiment in consciousness, the one of a kind arrangement of matter that has somehow become aware of itself and capable of contemplating the deepest questions about existence. The fact that you can experience deja vu, wonder about it, listen to explanations of it, and form your own thoughts about what it means is itself one of the most remarkable phenomena in the known universe. Sleep well, wherever you are in this vast, mysterious cosmos. May your dreams be filled with wonder and your sleep be peaceful. May you wake tomorrow with a renewed appreciation for the remarkable gift of consciousness, with all its glitches, mysteries, and moments of impossible familiarity. And may you carry with you a sense of awe for the extraordinary complexity and beauty of your own mind, this 3-pound universe that somehow contains multitudes. Sweet dreams and good night.